Welcome, and thank you for tuning in. You're listening to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Daniel Davis. Throwing out some numbers for you out there. For people in the world of sleep, you're going to be interested to learn that approximately 10 million people in the United States use prescription sleep aids that often leave people feeling lethargic the following morning. Even more alarming is that it is estimated that more than 30% of the population suffers from some type of insomnia, and those numbers increase to 50% of people over the age of 60 and 90% of people with depression. So what to do? What can we talk about? What can we discover when we discuss the cause and effect of sleep issues and how to use natural remedies and lifestyle modifications to fall asleep, stay asleep, and awake refreshed every day? Joining us here on the program today is a naturopathic doctor and yoga instructor of Illumination Wellness in Battleground and Portland. And she's joining us on the Beyond 50 radio program today to talk about how we can discover natural ways to be able to get physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual causes of sleep issues eliminated. I'd like to welcome to the Beyond 50 radio program today our guest, Dr. Rachel Stricker. Dr. Stricker, thank you for joining us here on the program today.
Sure, Daniel. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Now, let's talk about why sleep medications and how come they're not very effective for sleep issues.
Sure. So, sleep medications are usually known as hypnotic and sedatives. And so what they do is they really knock you out so that you can go to sleep. But what we find with these medications, especially with long-term use, is that they actually will shorten certain stages of sleep. And these stages are stage 2, 4, and REM sleep. And they can also cause a lot of frequent waking. So the problem with sleep medications is really that they just don't treat the underlying cause of the disease. They don't treat the underlying cause of the insomnia in the first place. And one of our founders of naturopathy, Henry Limlar, had something that he called the law of dual effect of drug action. And so this law of dual effect says that the first action of drugs is a temporary effect, and it's basically your body's efforts to overcome and eliminate this drug from the system. And then the second is the more lasting effect, which is the retention of this drug in the system, and it causes destructive action. So even though these sedatives will kind of paralyze the brain and the nerves in order to put you into this sleep pattern, if the insomnia is actually due to some kind of constitutional cause, the insomnia always returns with doubled force. And this is what we see as rebound insomnia, which is when people take sleep medications for a period of time, they stop taking them, and they have to end up needing them again because they get this really severe rebound insomnia. Mm-hmm.
Now, there's no doubt that part of what we talked about as I was opening up the show was about emotional causes of sleep deprivation. There's a big one there because of how we face a day and an age where we're just bombarded with information, we're distracted with distractions, if you will, and having to get up and go to work, the Monday morning blues. There's a whole litany of things that we face, and it doesn't surprise me that people think tranquilizing themselves would be the easiest route to be able to get themselves into dreamland.
Right. It's certainly a very societal thing that, we aren't really taught to express and deal with our emotions in a healthy way. Most of us are not really taught how to deal with stress. So we end up in adulthood just being overwhelmed with stress and overwhelmed with emotions, and all of these things are just dying to get out of us, and they end up, physically manifesting in the body with different kinds of disease too. So that's really one of the biggest issues when it comes to sleep. There's a high correlation between depression and insomnia, and certainly even people that don't have chronic insomnia, we've probably all had those nights where we've just been worried about something going on in our lives and haven't been able to sleep. So it's pretty evident that it is our emotions and our mental states that takes us into that place.
Now, I know people would think, well, why is sleep such an important issue to address? And I know just recently I was listening to a doctor talking about melatonin. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you can go out to pretty much any grocery store this day and age and you can buy melatonin supplements. And I think there's a little bit of confusion about, is that a good thing or what? But during the sleep cycle, isn't melatonin naturally produced by the body?
Yeah, that's correct. So melatonin is supposed to be produced by the body, and basically it's our our little antennas, our receptors with light. So, as the sun goes down and as it gets dark, we start to release melatonin naturally, which helps set us up to fall asleep and get good sleep after the sun goes down.
Mm-hmm. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because apparently melatonin is one of these great cancer preventions. Is that true?
Right. So, the studies that I've seen that are the best with melatonin and with cancer are particularly really good for people that work the graveyard shift, so work, third shift and work overnight. And so these are the people that are sleeping during the day. So, they're not producing melatonin in the correct kind of sleep pattern since they are sleeping during the day. And so they do find that this reduction of melatonin and certainly issues with not having enough sleep in general can be really helpful for those people that work the graveyard shift in preventing cancer as well as other kinds of chronic disease.
Well, there's the other interesting thing, too, that I think we've been disrupted over the years of technological advances, that we don't really live in an agrarian age where we rise when the sun rises and we sleep when the sun sets.
Right.
So it throws a lot of natural rhythms off, but is it possible for people who have broken away from that, I know I'm one of them, who basically sleep when they're tired and wake up when it's time to get up, whether the sun's up or down or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, there's certainly benefits in having just normal regulatory sleep patterns. So, too many of us get into the habit of not getting enough sleep during the weekdays, and then we try to catch up on that sleep debt on the weekends. But then, come Sunday evening, it's hard to go to bed early and wake up early to get back into that routine again. So, I certainly really recommend for people to always go to bed at the same time and always try to wake up at the same time in the morning. And there's a little bit of leeway to that, so if you're waking up at 4 a.m. to go to work on the weekdays, maybe you don't want to wake up at 4 a.m., but you certainly should be getting up by maybe 6 a.m. so that it's still pretty close. And then, going back to what you said just about having screen time and all of that, that's the other thing I really recommend to people is that you start setting yourself up for sleep, by shutting off lots of the lights in the house, by about 8 p.m. and you start reducing your screen time, and that includes phones and computers and tablets and TV, at least an hour before bed. So all of that is really going to help set you into those really normal sleep patterns and get you into the right flow to have better sleep. And another thing I want to just mention, too, is that there's an old saying that says 1 hour of bed before midnight is equivalent to 2 hours at any other time. So that means that the best sleep, the most restorative sleep that we get is actually between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So I really recommend for people to go to bed as close to 10 p.m. as they can. Again, a little bit of leeway with that, so maybe definitely making sure you're in bed by 11 p.m. so that you are getting that time period where you're getting the most restorative sleep.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't mean to seem contradictory to what you're saying, because obviously you're pretty much an expert in this area here, but for me, personally, my favorite time to sleep, honestly, is between 5 and 11 in the morning. And it's really interesting because here's my reason behind that. I really find that I just sleep nicely. I feel like that part of the day just seems quiet and settled. And I dream a lot more during that time than I do if I go to sleep at night. And, I dream all the time anyway. I can't even seem to get my mind to ever shut up. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it can just rattle your cage and you wake up because it's like, I can't do this anymore. It's driving me nuts. But is that healthy?
I really believe strongly in individualized medicine, right? So, if this is something that works for you, that would work for somebody else. Mm-hmm. I think there's certainly a lot of great benefit of sort of rising and falling with the sun, and we really get that great natural vitalization by doing that. But as far as like with the dream states and things go, that might just be the time that you are in that REM sleep, which is when we're usually producing dreams. And certainly we go through those REM sleep patterns differently. So, I kind of spoke briefly about the stages of sleep. So these stages of sleep, we basically go through these stages, and then the REM sleep comes at the end of each one of those stages. So, there's a great variance in those sleep stages for people, so some people will stay in certain sleep stages for 90 minutes, and sometimes, it's much more rapid change of the stages than that. So, certainly I would say if you're dreaming a lot, especially during that period of time, you may be just going through very quick stages of sleep and spiking into that REM sleep very quickly.
Now, is REM sleep healthy? Is that important for people to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and why is that? Dr. Rachel Stricker, are you still with us?
Still here?
Okay, yeah,
yes.
I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds like your phone wants to go to sleep and it's trying to approach the REM state because it sounded interesting. So.
Yeah, I've been keeping it up too late at night or something.
Yeah, there you go. Either that or you've been feeding it just before bed. We know that that's not a good thing to do.
Yeah, so. Right. Yeah, so, these different stages of sleep are going through different deeper stages of sleep, and so the REM sleep is known as the dream state. And so, our dreams are really important, and one of the interesting things is that scientists really don't understand sleep all that well. We really don't understand why we have to sleep and why we have to sleep so much, or what these stages of sleep mean, or why we dream. There's lots of theories on dreaming and on sleep that, haven't totally been proven. So, one of the theories, of course, on dreams is that we are basically taking everything that we learned throughout the day and we're putting them into different compartments in the brain and deciding whether or not they're important, whether or not we need to keep them and store them as a memory or not. But, certainly from a more esoteric spiritual theory of dreams is that, this is kind of our higher consciousness or different spiritual realms coming in and talking to us and teaching us lessons and showing us things. So, dreams are very important. So getting into that REM sleep is definitely very important.
Very much so, and I know that as I just mentioned about diet, I know that's really important. And the most important thing I discovered is try not to eat at least a reasonable large amount of food before you go to bed, but probably eating before bed isn't such a great idea anyway. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I generally tell people that they should avoid eating heavy foods before bed, and my, again, general rule of thumb is that you shouldn't eat 2 hours prior to bed. So, really, I try to keep people from snacking after dinner. So, having your dinner and maybe you have a light snack, or maybe you just don't have anything at all, depending on what time you're eating dinner and what time you're going to bed. So, the idea of that is that food, it takes us a long time to process our food. So, the whole process of chewing and swallowing and going into the stomach and moving into the intestines and that whole process that we go through to digest food really requires a lot of energy and requires a good amount of time as well. So if you're having a really heavy meal that takes a lot of energy and a lot of time for your digestive system to take care of, what happens is you go to sleep and the digestive system is kind of shutting down and resting, and so you end up creating kind of rancid environment in the digestive system because that food is still kind of sitting there undigested, and I think it really leads to a lot of gastric reflux that people will experience during the night and a lot of nausea and just kind of stomach aches and things that people will experience in the morning. So that's why it's generally good to just avoid eating right before bed. Now, if you're the kind of person who just has a very quick metabolism, or you're kind of having lighter meals for dinner, or you kind of get into that very hypoglycemic, having low blood sugar arena, having a light snack can be beneficial for you, but it should be the right kinds of foods. So there's certain kinds of foods that are actually high in tryptophan and serotonin, which really help our bodies relax. So the one that we probably know the best is turkey. So there's a reason why you feel pretty tired and want to take that nap after Thanksgiving dinner, because turkey is very high in tryptophan and it does help the body come into this relaxed state. Other foods like dairy and nuts, whole wheat, bananas, and cherries are other foods that are really great to have before bed if you need to have a snack and want to have something that's going to help you kind of wind down and relax the body a little bit more. And just a side note on food, too, the other things that, should definitely be avoided before bed are things like alcohol and tobacco and caffeine. So, of course, we know caffeine makes us feel more alert and certainly can disturb sleep, and long-term tobacco use can do some of those same things. And then with alcohol, so alcohol is kind of one of those interesting ones because it can certainly help people feel more relaxed, as it is a depressant. So it helps people feel more relaxed. It can help you fall asleep, but what we find is that drinking alcohol before bed will keep you from getting into those deeper stages of sleep and will also increase waking during the night.
Now, it's interesting about alcohol because I remember many, many years ago before I got into radio, I did work in the restaurant industry, and it was a 24-hour place, and it wasn't too far away from a country nightclub. And it would be astounding. We would call it the bar rush as it is. So here's these people out there partying, drinking copious amounts of alcohol, then coming in and deciding hash browns, eggs, bacon, toast, you name it, the whole gamut of things was the right thing to do because it's just before bed. And I thought, how do they do this to themselves? And I know they can't be getting any sleep, but imagine a guy that has to get up the next day at 6 in the morning and be at work. The kind of trouble that would produce as well. What are the dangers of something like that?
I think that it's something that really can evolve into a very chronic issue. So, certainly people that drink a lot of alcohol are very used to drinking alcohol before nighttime. If you remove that and you all of a sudden stop, you probably are going to have that rebound insomnia happen, just like, if you were taking a prescription medication for sleep, you'll have that same sort of effect. And then, eating those really heavy meals, those really greasy, heavy meals, is going to take a toll on the digestive system. I mean, that tends to be what people crave anyways when they're drinking alcohol, or those kind of fatty, greasy foods, because it does help absorb the alcohol.
Yeah, there's the body thinking, are you kidding me? There's no way we're getting any sleep tonight.
And it's a very protective mechanism, right? I mean, this is like the ego self that's in us that's constantly trying to do everything it can to keep us in survival, to keep us in that homeostatic point of the body. So, the divine intelligence of the body tells us, hey, you need to eat some greasy, fatty food right now to help absorb some of this alcohol, which is a poison, to absorb some of this poison and get it out of the system a little bit more quickly. So that's what we do. That's what we crave. That's what the brain tells us that we need. So, certainly doing that over time can lead to a lot of chronic issues, not just with sleep, but definitely in the digestive system as well.
Fascinating stuff here. Now, I know that sleep hygiene is another one I don't think a lot of people would think about, and I realized, going back to those years ago, I would work kind of late. I'd go home, and I really wouldn't shower before bed, but I didn't feel dirty either. But I noticed that when I did start showering before I went to bed, I felt more refreshed, and I really did sleep better. So sleep hygiene is pretty big, isn't it?
Yeah, sleep hygiene. And so really sleep hygiene is much more, so we think about hygiene, right, as brushing our teeth and taking a shower, and that's good hygiene. But sleep hygiene is more about doing the proper things to set yourself up for sleep. So even what you mentioned about taking a shower before bed is a really important thing. And going back to Henry Lumar, which I spoke about earlier, as one of our founders of naturopathy, he always said that, you need to make sure to change your clothes. So don't go to sleep in the clothes that you wore all day long. And there's many traditions that really believe strongly in washing your feet before you go to bed, so that you're not carrying all of the toxins and things that you had all day long. I mean, it's one of the reasons why we don't wear our shoes in bed too, right? The same sort of thing. So taking care of the body and doing that kind of thing is really great. And then, as far as changing the clothes too, it's best to wear really light, very porous type clothing, or no clothing at all if you're going to go to sleep, and to make sure that your bedding is really comfortable and it's not too heavy. We find that people sleep a lot better in a room that's a little bit cooler, and definitely a room that's very well ventilated. The other recommendation as far as sleep hygiene goes is that I really recommend that people only use their bedroom for sleep and for sex. And that means not watching TV in bed, not worrying in bed, not doing a lot of other activities in the bedroom, because what it can do is it can create associations in your brain of wakeful activity. So if you're doing a lot of wakeful activity in your bedroom, like, you're going to have that association while you're asleep, and it's going to disturb your sleep. So it's really good to just use the bedroom, as it is meant to do. And then, just talking about the TV too, so definitely keeping the TV out of the bedroom, but if you're going to watch TV before bed, like I mentioned earlier, you should be shutting it off at least an hour before time. And I also recommend that people only watch TV that's funny or educational. So that bad habit that many people have of watching, crime shows or the news, watching CSI before bed and then trying to go to bed, like, no wonder your body doesn't feel safe. Like, why would you want to go to sleep? That's a lot of stimulation that you're bringing into your psyche before you're trying to come into this place where you're going to fall asleep.
I know my partner says be very wary of what you watch before sleep, and she can't understand why sometimes I might see a horror film, not necessarily the slasher types, but, the fact that I actually expose myself to that. I said, well, quite honestly, it really doesn't bother me all that much, but apparently that's not a really good thing to do, is it?
No, not so good, and certainly we all have a little bit different reactions to that. So if you're watching those movies, you very may well be taking them just at entertainment value and aren't having a whole lot of an emotional response to it. But I would say, even for you, that it would probably be really good just to kind of monitor your emotional response. So even though you might not feel scared or anxious consciously, it would be really good for you to maybe monitor what other kind of reactions might be happening in the body. So maybe notice if your heart rate is going up or your breathing is speeding up or something. And that means that even though you're not conscious of an emotional reaction, you are having a stress reaction in the body from watching those types of movies.
Fascinating stuff. I know it's interesting that you see so many people with multiple televisions in their house, and one of the worst places I can consider having one would be in the bedroom. I think that's ridiculous.
Yep,
but that's
absolutely.
just me, turning that thing on and then even having a sleep timer on the whole thing, just, oh my goodness, it's just kind of crazy. Oh.
Yeah, and it is about just changing our routines up. So, we are these creatures of habits, and our brain loves to just have everything, very controlled environments that we know exactly what we're going to do each day, day in and day out. But really it's just about changing those habits and changing that routine. So, instead of, watching TV or watching the news in bed, like, just shut it off and just read something or write, taking a bath, having a warm cup of tea instead of that cup of wine before bed. It's just about making those conscious choices of things that are going to be better for you in the long run.
Oh, very good. Now, I understand that there are natural remedies if you're having a difficulty, you haven't changed these basic things. Don't really watch TV before you go to bed. Certainly don't eat big before you go to bed, are very important things. And I would think that another thing that would be really important, too, is to learn to wind down during some time before you go to bed. Maybe meditate or, as you suggest, do some yoga. What are some other things you might share with our listeners out there that they can consider doing naturally before having to go to that next step where they might need something to help them out?
Yeah, so let me, I'll talk first about just the yoga and meditation for improving sleep quality, and certainly just relaxation techniques falls into this category too. And then I'll kind of loop back around and talk about some herbs that are great. So these are, more natural remedies that you can use for sleep issues. So when it comes to yoga, there's many different kinds of yoga, and of course when yoga came into the Western civilization, we had to make it our own, So now there's hot yoga and these super vigorous types of yoga, and so sometimes people don't think about yoga as being very calming. They think about it as a hard workout where you've got to put your leg behind your head and twist yourself into all kinds of different positions. But really, from the Yoga Sutras, which is kind of the yoga Bible, is that yoga is nothing more than to calm the fluctuations of the mind. And so really yoga is meant to just settle down all of those worries, those anxieties, those fears, all of that mental activity, and get us to this place of stillness where it's said that the higher consciousness can speak. So our really intuitive self can speak up when everything else starts to quiet down. One of the best images I associate with this saying is that if you think about a lake, right, and you keep throwing stones in the lake, and the stones are representative of our thoughts and our worries, and so you keep throwing stones in the lake, and so you keep creating all of these ripples in the water. And so you can't see the bottom of the pool where the answer lies, where our intuition and our higher consciousness lies. But if you stop throwing those stones in, the water becomes still and perfectly clear, and you can see all the way to the bottom, and you can find all the answers within yourself. So it's a really great way to think about yoga as that, as the calming of the fluctuations of the mind. So with that being said, there are a couple of yoga poses that are really great for kind of winding people down. So one is called legs up the wall pose, and it's exactly how you would think it is. It's where the upper body is lying on the ground, and then the legs are propped up against the wall. So you pretty much just scoot your bottom over to the wall, and then you swing your legs up, and then you just lie there for a period of time. And this is incredibly restorative all on its own. It's something I actually used to use in medical school while I was staying up late at night. I would prop my legs in this position for about 15 minutes when I, did need to stay up late studying, and it would be incredibly restorative and much better than a cup of coffee for sure. But it definitely can help us just wind down and get to that place of being ready for sleep and coming into relaxation as well. So that's a really great one. Another one is just doing things where you're lying on the back. So one we call reclined bound angle pose. It's basically that you're laying on your back, and you fold the knees out so that the soles of the feet are touching. So your knees are wide and the soles of the feet are touching. And so this is a really great restorative pose as well. Another reclined position is just doing a reclined spinal twist. So again, you're laying on your back, you bend your knees, and then you just take the knees over to one side. So you're in a twisted position. This really is we know it as a very detoxifying pose as well. And it also has that very restorative nature to it. Now, if you've ever been to a yoga class before, the yoga class will end in a pose that we call shavasana, which actually means corpse pose, and it's literally just lying on your back. And so this is a pose that's really wonderful for winding you down. And so for people especially that have difficulty falling asleep, I definitely recommend that they get into this posture when they're falling asleep, so that they're laying on their back. And so when you're lying on your back, you can do a couple of different things to help to slow the mind down and settle the mind down. And so one of the things that you can use is a mantra. And so mantras are basically these affirmations or these repetitions of words that we'll say to ourselves either over and over again, or we'll say it, just once, but do the same one every single evening. Now, this is one, again, from Dr. Linmar, one of the fathers of naturopathy. And so I'm just going to read this one, but certainly people can make this their own and find their own way to do this. But this was kind of one of his suggestions to use as a mantra when you're trying to fall asleep. So he says, I am now going to sleep soundly and peacefully. I am master of my body, my mind, and my soul. Nothing evil shall disturb me. At whatever time in the a.m., neither earlier nor later, I shall awaken, rested, and refreshed, strong in body and mind. I shall meet tomorrow's tasks and duties promptly and serenely. So, the object of this is really to put that positive affirmation there that you're going to fall asleep and you're going to wake at a certain time and that you're going to wake rested. And so that's you putting it out there that that's what you want to create. And so it's much better than going through the vicious cycle that a lot of people with insomnia do of starting to actually have this stress response and this fear response because they have such a difficulty falling asleep that now it's like they go to bed and they have this immediate stress response that it's like, oh no, I'm going to struggle, I'm going to have difficulty falling asleep, I'm going to wake up tomorrow and not feel rested, I'm only going to sleep 2 hours, and so they go through this vicious cycle. So this is a great way just to reverse that vicious cycle and to set yourself up for something much more positive. And then doing stuff like progressive body relaxation, where you're basically walking through the body parts, you're visualizing your breath entering the body parts and relaxing different parts of the body as you move along. And then using different kinds of breathing techniques. So just like counting sheep, you can count your breath. And so this is about deepening your breath and having really nice deep inhales and exhales, and again, visualizing that breath going into certain parts of the body and relaxing the body can be a really great routine to get into too.
Now,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, when you were talking about that mantra, there was something that was really striking about that and what you said afterwards, and that is, allowing your body to know that there's a time that you're going to wake up. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest stressors of sleep, and this is just my opinion, are when people have to use alarm clocks. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're basically just using alarm clocks as a crutch because we don't have a normal sleep routine. And for anybody out there that does have a normal sleep routine where they really are going to bed at the same time every night and really waking up at the same time every morning, you certainly can continue to do that without needing an alarm clock. So this is putting the body into those sleep rhythms and those sleep patterns. And so the body produces its hormones at the right amount of time. That means it's producing melatonin before you go to bed and setting you up for sleep. That means it's producing cortisol, the highest spike of cortisol that you're supposed to have. It's supposed to be first thing in the morning, which makes you wake up, which makes you get going on your day. And so, we get into these different types of stress patterns and messing up our sleep patterns. And then we have these spikes of cortisol at different times of the day. So people can have these cortisol spikes right before bed or even during the night. And that's not the way it's supposed to be. So when you have that normal sleep routine, the hormones know when they're supposed to be produced and know when they're supposed to be decreased.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I remember I used to hate having an alarm clock, and then I finally evolved to a point where instead of the buzzer, the beeper, that would actually be the radio and music would come on, but it would come on in a certain soft way, usually about 20 minutes before I really needed to wake up and get up. And that was kind of a neat way because that music or whatever was going on would actually come into my dream worlds. And preferably, hopefully it was a song you really enjoyed because you'd have an interesting dream experience. So you could wake up with an interesting smile on your face, like, wow, that was kind of a neat way to wake up. But eventually it got to a point that I just didn't need an alarm clock at all anymore. And it really didn't matter what time I went to sleep, if I needed to be up in an hour or I needed to be up in 5 or 6 hours, whatever the case is, no matter how deep my sleep was, I could always find myself waking up just before I needed to. And I even began to experience a very unique phenomenon when it came to work, that I would actually start dreaming about work just before I had to wake up. So you really kind of get into some really interesting things when it comes to time and dimensions and things like that, putting away all that technological stuff and really getting to your own natural biorhythms and, as you were talking about the doctor and the sleep mantra, becomes a really fascinating exploration, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is the divine intelligence of the body. I mean, we know exactly what we need at all times of the day. It's just we have to remove all of those obstacles that we create for ourselves that are really what's, causing disease and causing trouble in the body.
Fascinating stuff. I'd like to explore now, if you don't or you find it difficult to have these natural things that we should be changing in our lives to get better sleep. For instance, don't have the television in your bedroom. Don't watch too much TV or the wrong things just before you go to sleep. Certainly don't drink a lot and don't eat a lot before you go to sleep. And if you're going to eat, be sure you're eating the right things. Proper sleep hygiene is certainly very, very important here. Good emotional states. You can certainly maybe meditate before you go to sleep if you're feeling a little bit of anxiety, anger, stress from the day. Meditate that stuff away so that you can actually relax. But if people find themselves finding it difficult to do these things they can do that don't cost them anything but a little bit of their time and making the right choices, what types of things can people use that might help aid in sleep?
Yeah, so as far as using more natural things, there are some herbs that I do like to use for sleep issues. So I'm going to first mention the adaptogens. So adaptogens is a type of herb that just tends to be very, very restorative in the body. And really, if there's ever a period of time, or maybe it's just part of your life, that it is quite stressful. If you have kids, if you're in school, if you're starting a new job or just recently retired, or any of those kind of big life changes, which can be really wonderful and exciting, but are still considered a stressor in the body. It's still a change from our normal routines, taking adaptogens can be really wonderful for that. And adaptogens are so great for people too, just because, we live in a very, very stressful, very toxic world. So, there's using the herbs to help the body restore itself is very helpful. So a couple of these adaptogens that I really like, I'll touch on. And so one of the adaptogens is an Indian herb known as ashwagandha. And so ashwagandha is really fantastic as an adaptogen and has a lot of research and evidence of it being really great, especially for insomnia. So ashwagandha in Sanskrit, it actually means impart the strength of a horse. So it's really about restoring the body and having this, horse-like vitality. So taking ashwagandha can be really great. The adaptogens you really need to, especially if you have more chronic insomnia or have just a lot of stress going on, it can take a little bit of time. You can't expect these adaptogens to, take them one day and all of a sudden you have perfect sleep the next night, because they're not a drug. They don't work that way in the body. They build up in the body slowly over time, so you have to be a little patient and let them do their thing. So certainly it can take up to 3-6 months to really restore the body to where it needs to be if you're in some type of chronic insomnia. So, one of my mentors, who is a naturopath and also an Ayurvedic doctor, he recommends that people actually take ashwagandha pills orally. So, taking one in the morning, taking one at noon, and then taking a few before bedtime to help with sleep. But he also recommends that people open up the capsule of ashwagandha and mix it with a little bit of lavender oil and a lavender essential oil and some type of other oil to make a little paste, and then rub it in a circular motion on the forehead and the soles of the feet. So ashwagandha is one that you can use both orally, internally, and also use it topically to help with sleep. A couple of the other adaptogens are rhodiola and glycyrrhiza and holy basil. Holy basil is another Indian herb. It's just really great and restorative to the body. A couple of the other herbs that can be great for sleep issues, especially acute sleep issues, but definitely has some validity for doing well over time. So many of us know about chamomile tea as being really relaxing, and chamomile tea is especially great for people that have a lot of anxiety and irritability. So chamomile tea and getting, just like I mentioned, getting yourself into a routine where you're having a cup of tea before bed can also kind of set you up to get better sleep. And the other one is hops. And so it's interesting, right? Hops is in beer and can help people fall asleep. But, the hops, like using the actual plant of hops, can be really helpful and is well suited for those people that also have that kind of anxious energy and irritability. And the best way to use hops is actually by making a hops pillow. So you take some dried hops and you can sew it or put it in some kind of cloth that is porous and that the scent of the hops can come out, and you just put it under your pillow at night, and it can be something really great. The other kind of pillow trick is also with lavender. So this is, again, one that lots of people know as being really relaxing and also can decrease anxiety and also can decrease pain. So lavender can be used. I love to use lavender essential oil topically on the body, but, you can also make a little lavender pillow that you put under your pillow at night to help induce sleep and relaxation and help you to sleep a little more soundly. Another herb that I really like is valerian. Now, if you've ever taken an herbal sleep formula, you've probably seen valerian in there. And valerian kind of has this warrior spirit to it that kind of tells us to toughen up, kind of let go of your problems, let go of your worries, and just go to sleep so you can be vital and be a warrior again tomorrow. So valerian has a little bit more of that kind of punch, that knock you out sort of thing, but can be really helpful. Certainly should be used for more acute sleep issues rather than long-term, because I certainly believe most strongly in people finding the cause of their insomnia, especially that chronic insomnia. So, even though taking herbs is a little more healthy for the body than taking a prescription medication, you're still kind of doing the same thing of just putting a Band-Aid on the problem. So these can be helpful in certain times of stress, or if we just need to get a little bit better sleep, but are much better used acutely rather than long-term.
Fascinating stuff. Now, people can find out more about this at your website, which is what?
So my website is www.illuminationwellness.com. And so Illumination Wellness is my business name, and my tagline for my business is lighting the path to wholeness. So I certainly believe really strongly in treating the whole self, which we call tole totem in naturopathic medicine. So this means treating the body, the mind, and the spirit. So that's really kind of my business goal and my purpose in this life.
Well, very good. I know people can also find out more. They can follow us on Twitter at beyond50radio.com and use the hashtag Remedies and Lifestyle, and there you'll find the website for Dr. Stricker to discover how you can battle that sleep insomnia and get better, refreshed sleep, and certainly be a better person the next day, I would think.
Oh, definitely. Make the world a better place for all of us, right?
You better believe it. No more road rage for me. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program. And for our listeners, the website one more time.
www.illuminationwellness.com.
Dr. Stricker, thank you for joining us here on the Beyond 50 radio program.
Thanks so much, Daniel. It was great.
We want to thank you, the listeners out there. You can also discover more by visiting us at beyond50radio.com, the number 50, and also sign up for our free weekly e-news updates. Follow us on Twitter at Beyond50Radio as well as Google+. I'm Daniel Davis. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, live your day past halfway.